Throughout her high school years, Rhonda Hinson was a popular girl whom many other students adored, a tennis player, a regular kind and happy-go-lucky kid. But many people started to notice a change in the teenager. Nearly a month after graduating high school in Valdosta, North Carolina, worry and a furrowed brow replaced her smiling and laughing disposition. She was normally well pleased to be on her own, but began to ask her father to join her during her outings. During one of their times together, she confided in her father that she needed to break something upsetting to him, to which he said he was willing to listen. But she backstepped her plan to let her father know what was going on. Although she pondered getting the weight of worry off her chest and sharing her burden, no one in her family or circle of friends would learn what encumbered her mind. And after the events that took place, they surely wished Rhonda would have told them. Rhonda's mother, Judy Hinson, however, did recollect an odd exchange with her daughter in which Rhonda discussed whether or not it was okay to see a married man romantically. Judy gave the best answer to the question that anyone could. She said the only thing that comes from that is people getting hurt. One can, of course, surmise from this dialogue that Rhonda could have been in the subjugation of a love triangle, one that could have been immensely dangerous. It was Christmas time, an occasion synonymous with love, family, good times, warmth, and presents. Tuesday, December 22nd, 1981, when then 19-year-old Rhonda Hinson had just left her first Christmas party that she celebrated with her co-workers. A short time before the party, Rhonda had helped set up the Christmas tree in the home she lived in with her still married parents. The American Legion Hut in Hickory, North Carolina held the annual party for the Hickory Steel Company, where Rhonda was a clerical worker. She left the party with two friends around midnight. They made it back to her friend's house shortly thereafter, and Rhonda called her boyfriend and picked up her beige two-door Datsun. She drove west on Interstate 40 before exiting onto the Mineral Springs Mountain Highway 305 off-ramp. She then traveled north towards her home when an unknown subject fired his high-powered rifle at the car. Due to extreme luck on behalf of the killer, or him being an expert marksman, the projectile traveled through the back side of the car, through the trunk, through the back seat, through the driver's seat, and into Rhonda Hinson's back, which perforated her lung and heart. Tragically, she was only a half a mile away from her house. Because Rhonda had been notably worried about something for some time before her death, one can wonder if she did expect something like this to happen. At 1 o'clock in the morning, her mother suddenly awoke in a panic, feeling like Rhonda had died in a car accident. Those with medical knowledge suspected the poor young girl was rendered immobile by the singular bullet wound that caused her untimely death, but she was found outside her car. Some question if the attacker pulled her body outside of the vehicle after shooting her, but for what purpose? It's unknown if she had any idea who it was that killed her. This does have many hallmarks of a planned killing, though. There were a handful of people that knew Rhonda would be driving home alone from the party, and the time of night and cover of darkness would have allowed for the inconspicuous kill shot. But then again, this may have been a case of mistaken identity. She drove a generic-looking car, which would have been made even more general-looking under the darkened winter sky. Police suspected it to be a random act initially, but then decided, based on discomforting clues, someone she knew was most likely behind the gun that night. Her car was found with the engine still running. North Carolina Federal Bureau of Investigation's Special Agent John Settle discovered that it looked like Rhonda could have been the victim of a stalker the night of her death. He said that about 15 minutes to a half hour past midnight, a witness who drove under the I-40 bridge on Mineral Springs Mountain Road reported two men sitting stationary in a north-facing blue Chevy. The car was not only parked on the off-ramp that Rhonda used to exit the interstate only 30 minutes before she departed the highway, but also a mere 200 yards away from where her body was found. Another male who traversed the area mentioned seeing a similar style blue 70 Chevy with a messed up front end with a solitary male inside who sped away from the scene of the crime. After further traveling down the road, the witness said he saw Rhonda's car off to the side of the road. He reported seeing a woman motionlessly hunched over the steering wheel while a man stood outside the car. This second witness thought it was just a drunk couple and left the scene, which could have saved his life. Additionally, he reported seeing another car close by, a dark blue or black Trans Am, that he believed the murderer to be driving. Authorities have interviewed hundreds of suspects in the decades since the young girl's death and have amassed several filing cabinets worth of evidentiary paperwork. Witnesses and suspects have been questioned, evidence has been examined several times over, people have been polygraphed, and even psychics have been consulted on this case, but to no avail. Parents Judy and Bob Hinson continue to cling to the hope that they can find out who is at the center of this heinous murder that crippled their family and left Christmas as a bitter reminder of the murder of their beloved daughter, who was too young by today's standards to even drink a beer. Judy keeps Rhonda's room the same as it was when her daughter was alive. 40 years later, Rhonda's mother believes the killer or killers told at least one person they were responsible for the murder and eagerly awaits to see any perpetrator face justice. Though the beaming radiant light of Rhonda Hinson has been snuffed out 41 Christmases ago, her spark still burns brightly in the hearts of her parents and loved ones. The reward leading to the capture of anyone responsible for the crime has reached $20,000. If you know something, you can contact Lieutenant Rodney Norman by calling 828-438-5506. You can also remain anonymous and call Morganton Burke Crime Stoppers at 828-437-3333. Even anonymous tips will be eligible for a reward. The family of former Black Hill resident Paul Logan is still without answers a quarter of a century after the unsolved murder of the delivery driver's death. But he was much more than a takeout driver. He was a young, loving father of baby Natalie and 3-year-old Michael, the son of his parents, Elsie and Hugh, the partner to his girlfriend of 10 years, Pamela, a brother to his sister Dawn, and a friend who had his whole life ahead of him when he was suspiciously bludgeoned to death the day before Christmas Eve in 1993. While working at the Golden Flower Chinese restaurant, Paul had a request just shy of 10 p.m. for Chinese takeout and was told to bring the food to the remote Blue House Farm in Shotley Bridge, England. It was an ordinary call, like one he would have responded to many times before during the past 2 years on the job. But when he arrived and spoke to the homeowners, he quickly discovered that no one at the address had ordered any food and the earlier call had been a hoax. Over the past 3 months, his car had been vandalized by someone who had a grudge, and this could possibly be the work of the same angry adversary. He returned to his cream-colored Peugeot, ready to disappointedly drive back to work and hope for better luck, but he would never be seen alive again. When he reached the gate at the end of the pathway that had earlier been opened, he was probably mildly annoyed to find it now closed, so he got out to open it, and it would be his last task. This would be when he was ambushed. The homeowners grew suspicious as time passed, but they noticed the delivery driver's car was still there. A few phone calls were made between the homeowners, the Golden Flower Chinese restaurant, and Paul's loved ones, before the homeowners eventually called the police to the scene. Authorities soon arrived and noticed that the land's snow-laden surface was marred by the brutally beaten body of Paul. His cause of death was severe head trauma caused by an instrument which was never found. The authorities discovered he was dead at 2:15 a.m. His car's lights were still running and the doors were open. Paul did not have any money taken from his person, indicating that this was not a robbery and that the person or persons who killed him were motivated purely by personal means. Though they've struggled to find the exact motive in this case of Paul Logan's death, police have come across many people who harbored a grudge against the young man. The original phony phone call was later traced to the intersection of Snow's Green Road and Benefield Side Road in Shotley Bridge. One man was allegedly seen on the phone while another sat in a Ford Fiesta XR2, which was approximately 600 yards away from the restaurant where Paul worked. Paul's parents said that the holiday season was unbearably hard after his death, and they would celebrate for the sake of Paul's children, but they never put a decoration up after the tragedy. In 2003, they offered a £10,000 reward for anyone who could help help put their son's killer behind bars, but they unfortunately died before they could ever see justice for their departed boy. To add further insult to injury, Paul Logan's grave was riskily defaced by those claiming to be the murderers. Detective Superintendent Ian Sharp said officers had spoken to 2,271 people and taken 903 statements since the Christmas season of '93 and are still working to close the case. He said the case was so well planned and meticulous, it was most likely carried out by more than a single individual, possibly more than two. In Lavernia, Texas, on Christmas night in 1996, 32-year-old Patty Vaughn disappeared after an alleged argument, according to her husband J.R. Vaughn. Patty's family contended that the mother of 3 children was a good Christian woman who would never leave her children, who were only 9, 7, and 5 years old at the time. It made matters worse that Patty's family was suspicious of her estranged husband J.R., who had happened to be the last person to see her alive. He alleged that Patty stormed off without so much as a phone call to any of her worried family members, all of whom have remained doubtful over the years and distrustful of JR's behavior. Patty's van was later found with blood inside. Investigators have considered JR a person of interest but haven't obtained enough substantive evidentiary value to arrest him. The young Texas mother is presumably dead, but that doesn't mean investigators have ceased working on her case or searching for her body. In the early fall of 1996, Patty was said to have separated from JR, who moved out of the house much to her assuagement. Patty had been a stay-at-home mother for some time, but returned to work after the falling out of her and her husband. She was just starting to get her independence back and escape the pressure of a tumultuous relationship, as well as provide for her and her 2 sons and daughter. She had rekindled a romance with an old flame named Gary after he learned she was to divorce her then-husband. The day before Patty vanished, she and Gary had supper with her parents, where he was introduced as her new boyfriend. Patty's family seemed quite fond of him, as did she, and she was finally beginning to live a life that others thought she deserved. But little did they know, they were 24 hours away from tragedy. Investigators suspected that the new romantic endeavor could have infuriated JR and led him to do something unspeakable to the woman he had vowed to love and honor 11 years prior. JR wanted to spend the holiday with their kids, and Patty allowed it to happen. She was looking forward to going out on a date with Gary later that night on Christmas, and she made plans for her aunt to babysit the kids. Unfortunately for Patty, JR never let that happen. He purported that he and Patty quarreled over the condition of their marriage, saying it was inappropriate for the young mother to see other people even though they were en route to a divorce. The only other person to speak to Patty last, aside from JR, was her 18-year-old sister Jeannie Imes, who was in Georgia at the time. She said Patty sounded upset like she was crying. Patty's family tried to stop by her house and make her feel better, but JR shooed them off and said that she wasn't feeling well. After the blood-laden van was located, Patty's coworker equipped it with a spare tire and drove it back to her house. After examining the deflated tire, no puncture mark could be uncovered, and the presumption was that someone had manually let the air out. Additional blood belonging to Patty was traced to her bedroom, bathroom, and closet. The new boyfriend Gary did not prove to be a feasible suspect at all. He cooperated fully with investigators, passed a lie detector test, and provided an ironclad alibi for the time of Patty's disturbing disappearance. Gary had also helped arduously search for Patty, while JR, her own husband of over a decade, did not. Gary sadly died in a car crash after that terrible holiday season. When JR saw the investigation focusing on his direction, he hired a lawyer and refused to cooperate. Family as well as law enforcement working on the case considered him to not only be responsible for her vanishing, but also her death. JR later changed his name and moved out of the state of Texas with Patty's children. Barb Kinsey, Patty's cousin, said she was the sweetest woman she'd ever met and was in the prime of her life when she went missing. In a later interview, the cousin said Patty was an exceptional singer who was adored by anyone she had met. Patty's estranged husband JR later declared her dead and was eager to hop on a payout from her life insurance policy, but her mother Patsy insisted that the money be given to her children. Patsy was charged later that winter with breaking into JR's house and beating him with a baseball bat. In 2013, court officials dropped the charges. Patty Vaughn's case is still open and her body has never been found. No one has ever been charged in her disappearance or murder, and her family has never had any closure in the case they've desperately sought answers for over the last 26 years.